I'm Robert Lane, 67 years old, a retired Marine veteran. I built this house with my own two hands and paid for every brick myself. Last month at my own son's birthday party, my daughter-in-law told me, in front of everyone, that I should rest on the couch because I was making people uncomfortable. She had no idea the man she was dismissing still had close to $1 million in assets, a trusted lawyer who once served under him, and a dozen Marine brothers who'd still answer his call in a heartbeat. It all started 10 months ago after what they called a fall. In reality, it was a minor stroke. I recovered within 6 weeks. My body was fine, my mind sharp. Only my left hand still a little stiff from an old Gulf War injury. When my son Daniel suggested that he and his wife Megan move in to help, I agreed. That was my first mistake. Within days, Megan began treating me like I was already half gone. She'd talk slowly and loudly, as if my ears had stopped working. "Robert, do you need help with your medicine?" she'd say, her voice echoing through the house. My hearing isn't perfect, but my mind works just fine. Then came the decorations. My Marine photos, my medals, the flag my unit had sent me, all packed into boxes. "We're making the space more modern," she said. Modern apparently meant erasing any trace of me. A week later, my car keys disappeared. Daniel said, "Dad, it's safer if we drive you." I reminded them that my doctor had cleared me to drive, but Megan smiled and said, "We know what's best." Those 4 words burned deeper than any wound I'd ever taken. Soon she started intercepting my mail, claiming it was to reduce stress. Then she began speaking to my doctor about my supposed confusion, as if she were my caretaker. The neighbors started whispering that I was slipping. And the worst part, Daniel believed her. Every time she said, "He forgets things sometimes," he nodded, like I wasn't standing right there. I could feel myself disappearing in my own home. The proud Marine who once led men into combat was being treated like a child too fragile to choose his own breakfast. But I wasn't done yet. Marines don't break that easy. I began documenting everything, every insult, every time she spoke for me, every helpful gesture that took another piece of my independence. Then one night, everything changed. Megan left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. A message appeared from Daniel. "Did you talk to that lawyer about the guardianship papers?" That single word, guardianship, hit me like shrapnel. I opened the chat. Megan had written, "He won't even understand what it is. Once it's filed, we can manage the house and the accounts." Manage. That was her word for control. I stood there for a long moment, reading the messages again and again. My hand trembled, not from age, but from fury. These two weren't trying to take care of me. They were planning to take everything I'd earned. That night, I made a call to an old friend, Jerry Morrison. He'd served under me years ago, now a federal attorney with a reputation for being relentless. "Robert," he said, after I explained everything, "that sounds like elder exploitation. Don't confront them yet. Gather proof. We'll make it official when the time comes." And that's what I did. I wrote down dates, screenshots, every detail. I wasn't a confused old man anymore. I was a Marine on reconnaissance. Megan thought she was taking care of a broken veteran. She didn't realize she'd just woken up a soldier. She thought I was finished, but the next thing I discovered would expose everything she'd been hiding. After that night, nothing in the house felt the same. Every word Megan spoke sounded rehearsed. Every smile looked calculated. Even Daniel's voice carried a hesitation I'd never heard before, like he was afraid of disagreeing with her. But I had orders now, my own. Jerry had told me to document everything, and I took that advice like a mission briefing. Every morning I wrote in my notebook, time, date, what she said, what she did. Every small act meant to make me feel smaller. "Robert, you already took your pills when I hadn't. You're confused again when I wasn't." Each phrase was another brick in the wall she was building between me and my own life. I didn't fight back, not yet. Marines don't strike without strategy. Then came the doctor visit. Megan insisted on coming with me. just to make sure you don't miss anything important," she said with that soft tone people use with children. At the clinic, she spoke before I could. "Doctor, he's been having memory lapses. Sometimes he forgets names or gets lost in the house." I turned to her, calm but furious. "That's not true." She smiled at the doctor. "He doesn't always realize when he's confused. It's part of the decline." I saw the doctor's brow furrow, pen hovering above the clipboard. I couldn't let that lie take root. "Doctor, my memory is fine. I drove here without a GPS. I balanced my own accounts, and I still run every morning." The doctor glanced between us, clearly uncertain who to believe. That's when I realized how dangerous Megan really was. She wasn't just controlling me. She was building a paper trail of proof that I was incompetent. The moment we left the clinic, I called my doctor privately. I explained everything. She said, "Robert, your cognitive results today were perfect. I'll note in your file that there are no signs of decline." That small confirmation felt like a bulletproof vest. But the more I documented, the worse the pattern looked. She intercepted calls from my friends telling them I was resting. She told neighbors I wandered around the house at night, confused. She even canceled my subscription to the Marine Corps Gazette. When I asked why, she said, "You weren't reading it anyway." The final straw came when she hid my running shoes. "It's for your safety," she said. I laughed quietly. She thought I wouldn't notice. So I bought another pair and hid them in the garage, behind a box of old paint cans. Every morning before sunrise, I'd slip out the back door and run 5 miles, alone, free, alive. The rhythm of my steps reminded me who I was. Each mile was a promise I wasn't finished. Then one morning, as I stretched near the driveway, I caught her watching through the window. That afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, pretending to sound worried. "I'm really concerned about Robert. He thinks he's been running. He's starting to have delusions." Delusions. That word made my blood run cold. She wasn't just lying, she was creating a case. But what she didn't know was that every call she made, every whisper she told, every manipulation she tried, I was recording. And the next recording I got would change everything. She thought she could rewrite my story, but the next call she made would become the evidence that ended hers. 3 weeks after I started documenting everything, the house got quieter. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of silence you feel before a storm. Megan had stopped talking to me unless Daniel was around, and when she did, her tone was dripping with false sweetness. "Do you need help turning on the coffee maker, Robert?" I smiled and said nothing. I was already recording. My old lawyer, Jerry Morrison, had told me, "Keep your phone ready. Every lie she tells is ammunition." And I did exactly that. Then one afternoon I caught the sound I'd been waiting for. Megan was in the living room, phone on speaker, pacing back and forth. She thought I was napping. Her voice was calm, calculated. "So, if we can prove he's mentally incompetent, we'll get full control of his assets, right?" A male voice answered, "With guardianship, yes. You'd have access to everything. Property, investments, pensions, but you'll need medical proof of decline." She laughed. Actually, I laughed. "That won't be a problem. Half the time he doesn't even know what day it is." I stood in the hallway, phone in hand, recording every word. I knew exactly what day it was. Monday, 3:47 p.m., the day she dug her own grave. When she hung up, I stepped outside and called Jerry. "Got something," I said. "Tell me." I recorded her. "She's planning guardianship with her lawyer. You'll hear everything." "Robert," he said, "that's gold. Make backups, cloud, USB, whatever you've got. And start preparing your medical records, your bank statements, anything that proves you're managing your life independently." I followed his advice to the letter. The next morning I called my doctor again. "Can you put my last evaluation in writing?" She did. The report read, "The patient is fully competent, physically active, and mentally sharp. No evidence of cognitive impairment." Then I printed my financial statements. No late payments, no overdrafts, no missed deposits. I gathered everything into a binder, labeled each section like a military dossier. Evidence, command, proof. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, a Marine with a mission. But I wasn't done. I needed witnesses, people who knew who I was before Megan started spreading her lies. I began calling my old unit, men I hadn't spoken to in years. Lane? Holy hell, we thought you were dead. Still here, I told them. Just fighting a different kind of war. Each conversation reminded me who I used to be, a man of structure, of command, of pride. I told them what was happening, carefully, fact by fact. Jesus, Robert, one of them said, that's elder abuse. I know, I said, that's why I'm not letting it slide. One by one they offered help. Need a witness? Need a statement? Need someone to look her in the eye and remind her who she's dealing with? I didn't ask yet, I just said, be ready. A week later, Megan threw a birthday party for Daniel, at my house, of course. She invited her friends, her co-workers, people who didn't even know me. None of my friends were invited. When I asked why, she said, they're too intense for a small gathering. I smiled. She had no idea how intense things were about to get. That evening, I polished my shoes, wore my Marine Corps polo, and walked into that party like I owned the place, because I did. What happened next turned a quiet dinner into a declaration of war. She thought it was just another family party. But that night, she crossed a line that would cost her everything. Daniel's birthday party was supposed to be a celebration. For me, it was a test, a final check to see just how far Megan was willing to go. By 6 o'clock, the house was full of her people, her co-workers, her friends, her neighbors. Not one of my friends had been invited. Not Jim, not Tommy, not any of the Marines who'd watched Daniel grow up. I asked her quietly, why didn't you invite any of the old crew? She waved her hand like I'd asked about the weather. Robert, those old military guys are too serious. Let's keep tonight light-hearted. Light-hearted. That word burned. She didn't want my people there because they knew who I really was. I stood in the kitchen, looking at my medals, still hidden in a box where she'd shoved them months ago, and thought, let her talk. Let everyone see who she's become. When guests arrived, Megan was all smiles, playing the perfect hostess. I greeted a few people, polite but distant. I could feel her eyes on me, making sure I didn't say too much. At dinner, she raised her glass. Let's toast to family, she said sweetly, especially to Daniel's father, who's doing so well despite his challenges. The laughter that followed felt like static in my ears. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just looked at Daniel. He smiled awkwardly and took a sip of wine. He didn't even notice what she'd just done, turning me into a punchline in front of strangers. But the moment that broke me came later. The patio was packed, everyone laughing, music playing softly. I was sitting in my usual chair when Daniel walked over. Dad, Mrs. Henderson needs a seat. Could you maybe rest inside for a while? Rest, I asked. It's your birthday, son. I'm fine right here. Before he could answer, Megan, with a glass of wine in her hand, said loudly enough for everyone to hear, oh, just let him sleep on the couch. He naps all day anyway. He won't know the difference. The entire patio went silent. Every guest turned. Even the music seemed to stop. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Daniel froze. Megan realized what she'd said, but pride wouldn't let her take it back. I stood up slowly. My voice was calm, but every syllable carried the weight of months of humiliation. Megan, I said, this is my house, my chair, my son's birthday, and you just told me to sleep on the couch in front of my guests. She tried to laugh it off. Robert, don't be dramatic. I was just joking. I looked around at the faces staring at me. Seems no one's laughing. Daniel whispered, Dad, please don't make a scene. I smiled, a quiet, dangerous kind of smile. No, son, I'm done making scenes. I'm about to make a statement. Megan rolled her eyes. You're embarrassing yourself. I leaned in slightly and said, no, Megan, I'm reminding everyone who owns this house. Then I turned toward the door. Enjoy the party. I just need to make a phone call. Inside, I took out my phone and dialed the number I'd been waiting months to use. Jerry, I said, it's time. His voice was steady. Understood. You want me to bring company? Bring everyone. I hung up, looked out the window. and watched Megan laugh nervously as the guests tried to pretend nothing had happened. By the next afternoon, she wouldn't be laughing because the Marines were coming home. She thought the night was over, but by morning, 12 Marines and 1 federal attorney would be at my door. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. Megan moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Daniel barely looked at me. I could tell they both thought the awkward silence would make me drop it. They were wrong. By noon, tires crunched on the gravel outside, one car, then another, then another. Megan peered through the window. "Who's that?" I said nothing. The first to step out was Jerry Morrison, suit-pressed, briefcase in hand. Behind him came familiar faces: Jim Valdez, Mike Chin, Sarah Washington, men and women I'd served beside, now judges, lawyers, and VA officials. 12 Marines in total. Megan's smile collapsed. "Robert, what is this?" I opened the door. "It's called accountability." Inside, Jerry shook my hand like we were back on parade. "Morning, Captain." Megan blinked. "Captain?" Jerry nodded. "Captain Lane, United States Marine Corps. You didn't mention that, did you?" They filled the living room, calm, composed, every one of them radiating, the kind of authority that makes liars shrink. Megan tried to recover. "We've been caring for him since his fall. He has good days and bad days." The silence that followed could have cut glass. Judge Valdez spoke first, his voice low and even. "Ma'am, I've known Robert for 30 years. He doesn't have bad days. He has plans." Sarah Washington, the VA director, opened a folder. According to his medical file, his cognitive test last month was perfect. No decline, no confusion. "Would you like to explain your conflicting statements?" Megan stammered. He forgets things sometimes." I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped play. Her recorded voice filled the room. "So if we can prove he's incompetent, we'll get full control. Once we file guardianship, the house is ours." Megan went pale. Daniel's eyes widened. "You said that was hypothetical." She shook her head wildly. "He must have edited that." Jerry placed the transcript on the table. Timestamp, original file, verified metadata. Try again. Megan's voice cracked. "We were just trying to help him." I looked at her evenly. "You don't help someone by erasing who they are." Then I handed Jerry a folder, the binder I'd built. Dates, notes, screenshots, bank statements, doctor reports, everything. He flipped through it, nodding slowly. "Textbook financial exploitation. We'll file the report today." Daniel sank onto the couch. "Dad, I didn't know." I took a breath. "You didn't want to know. You let her convince you I was broken." Megan tried to speak, but Judge Valdez raised her hand. "Mrs. Lane, you're under preliminary investigation for attempted fraud and elder abuse. My recommendation is that you pack your things." For once, Megan had no clever response. I turned toward Daniel. "You can leave with her or start learning from this. Either way, you're out of my house." He nodded slowly, eyes wet. "I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry doesn't fix it. Integrity does." They left that afternoon with whatever they could fit in their car. No shouting, no drama, just the sound of the engine fading down the street. 2 weeks later, Jerry called, charges filed, Boz launching their own case. "You're clear." I thanked him, then laced up my running shoes. The next morning, I ran the Marine Corps 10K. Finished first in my age group. The crowd cheered as I crossed the line, lungs burning, heart steady. General Reeves handed me the medal and said, "Still leading from the front, Captain." Back home, the house felt lighter. No more whispered lies, no more forced smiles. Just peace. I hung the medal next to the flag Megan once hid. It glinted in the sunlight like a quiet promise. Proof that strength doesn't fade, it just gets wiser. A Marine never really retires. We just learn which battles are worth fighting. She tried to take everything from me. Instead, she reminded me who I am, and that's a battle she'll never win.